He is the grandmaster of political commentary and a veteran journalist. He really needs no other introduction. Mr. John Chancellor joins us this morning. How are you? Good to see you, John. Our viewers know after 11 years of doing this that I never do this, but if I hold up this book now, how many points do you get?
I get 15.
15?
Yeah, 15 whole points. You've already done it.
I've done it. That's it.
I can leave now. The day is finished. Thank you very much.
No,
it's been
wait,
nice.
This is a joke. This started on Letterman. You were explaining how these
points... It started years ago when a friend of mine and I had written a book, I guess. We were on a tour in 1984, and it got kind of boring. We did 16 cities, and so we began playing a game. We would award each other points if we could get the host of the program, or hostess, to say the name of the book. You've got 5 points. And if you could get them to hold up the book and show the front of it on television, then you, whoever arranged that, got 15 points. And I told that to Letterman, not thinking that he would, and he said, "Excuse me," and he held up the book. And I want you to have the points. So that's 15 points. It's now getting famous.
You're in the lead. You
yes,
must be in
but
the
I'm
lead
alone now, so it's sort of solitaire.
Oh,
yeah.
That's not fun. You know, in this book, you call yourself a frightened optimist.
I do.
And I'd love an explanation on that. You're concerned about the state of our country and how we fit in the world these days. How can one be a frightened optimist?
Well, because I think most Americans don't know how strong their country is. I got into writing this book because the polls indicated that most people thought Japan was now the #1 economic power in the world. It's not true. We're twice as powerful as Japan today. We're 5 times as powerful as West Germany. Yet a lot of Americans have sort of ceded the future, Eileen, to these other countries and are sort of giving up. So I say we have more power than we realize, but we're also in a lot of trouble. Let's use the power while we still have it to get out of the trouble we're in and keep our #1 position in the world.
When you say a lot of Americans are ceding the future, it makes me wonder how a regular, ordinary American can cede the future. You're really talking about our government. Isn't our government ceding the future?
Well, it's in some ways it's helping, but I think when the Gallup polls said last year that 58% of Americans thought that Japan was the #1 economic power, when about 60% said that in 10 years foreign companies would dominate the American economy, that is ceding the future to foreign competition.
It's almost giving up and allowing it.
And I don't think we have to give up. I think we have all this strength, but we have, and I go into why we feel bad about our country. A lot of Americans think things aren't working well, but they don't really know why. So I've tried to write an accessible, simple-to-read book. It's not for rocket scientists. It's not for political scientists. An accessible book that sort of lays it all out for you. Here are the problems, and here are some of the things we can do about them.
I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that in terms of education, we are in jeopardy with our future. Given the state of the 17-year-old mind in this country, the average mind, you have ideas. You believe that we might be better off moving forward to a 12-month cycle for school?
Sorry, kids. The old gentleman got on TV and said you have to go to school 12 months a year. But, yes, other countries do it. We are no longer a 19th century rural America. We're almost a 21st century high-tech America.
And that rule came about because kids could work in the farm and the fields and help. Parents were needed.
Yeah, but no more. So I say let's use the schools in a different way. But, you know, Eileen, just keeping the schools open or throwing more money at education won't do it. Schools are just part of education. Education involves relations with parents, parents with kids, hope, dreams, a vision of the future, and if we have to do a lot of things, it seems to me, to make the schools work. It isn't, we've focused too much on the schools. We've forgotten all the poor kids who have no hope.
Absolutely.
We've forgotten a kind of malaise in the American society that has to be turned around. Young people think our politics are meaningless now. So if we can do things about that, and I think we can renovate this country, then education is going to automatically improve because people will feel better.
Well, does John Chancellor sometimes think our politics are meaningless? Talk about how you might change the Congress of the United States.
Well, I think we ought to bite the bullet and go to federal financing, public financing.
For campaigning?
For campaigns, yes, the fall campaigns for Senate and the House.
Why?
Because right now, the politicians spend most of their time with a tin cup in their hand trying to raise money. The political action committees, the PACs, have far too much influence. We do, in fact, I think, have the best Congress, or the worst Congress money can buy. The Congress people themselves hate and despise raising money. Last year, when I was researching Peril and Promise, senators running for re-election to the U.S. Senate in the year 1990 were raising money at the rate of $143,000 a day. Now, how much time did they have left for you and me and the law and the country? So I say, sure, it's not perfect. Public financing isn't perfect, but it is certainly better than the tin cup system that we have
It'll even
now.
things out a bit, too, won't it? Will people be more apt to win on their merit rather than
Yes,
their
and I think it
pocketbook?
would open it up for challengers. The turnover rate in the House of Representatives today, this is awful, why am I laughing, is statistically identical to the turnover rate in the British House of Lords, and only death can get you out of the British House of Lords. So we've got to do a lot about our politics, but the main thing we have to do about our politics is make them really interesting again. Get people excited.
I agree with you.
I grew up in America where people had fights in bars on Saturday night because you insulted my guy, you know.
We cared. We were
cared, and
very passionate about it.
We had interesting, wonderful elections.
You've interviewed every president since Truman,
Yeah.
every Israeli premier since Golda Meir, in England, everyone since...
Well, Clement Attlee, right after Churchill.
Who in our country, in terms of presidents, do you feel is the most effective president for his time?
Roosevelt.
You
Notice I'm avoiding a lot of the more recent presidents.
Well, he did bite the bullet during very hard times. Is that the reason?
I think it was a combination of hard times and enormous political skill. But he also got the country working together during the Depression. And then when the war came along, we all automatically got together. And what I would love to see is a coming together again of America, because we are in an emergency situation now. The trick is to use our power before it's gone. And it won't be gone in your time, and it won't be gone in mine, but my grandsons, if we don't do something, my two grandsons are going to live in an America that we would not recognize today.
It seems to me there's such a filter down of attitude from the top. There isn't business, there isn't a family. It occurs to me that if you don't believe in those that run the country, then how can you believe in anything below? It does occur to me that the belief system is pretty bad right now for Americans.
There is a big, what we call a disconnect between the voters and the government. And you can see that in voter turnout, for example, in presidential elections, which was about half of the eligible American voters in 1988 said, the hell with it, they're not going to vote. That's a scandal.
Yeah, it is.
In the southern states, it was the lowest turnout in 164 years. Young people tell me, and all the polls show this, that they just don't feel any connection to their government in Washington. So I think we really have to reinvigorate the American political system. I think I offer some technical changes on how we should nominate presidents and what kind of campaigns they should have. We already use public funding for presidential campaigns. We gave $42 million to, what's his name, the governor of Massachusetts?
Oh,
right?
don't
We'll
be a
think of
wise
it
guy.
before, okay. But Michael Dukakis got $42 million. George Bush got $42 million. Then they gave us the most abysmal campaign I have seen in my life as a political reporter. So I also argue that what we ought to do, if they take our money to run these campaigns, how about us having some say in how they spend it? How about real debates instead of the sham press conferences they hook us into? How about some advertising that doesn't insult our intelligence?
You just were at a forum with 10 press secretaries. What did they express in terms of changes over the years? Or what would they like to see changed?
Oh, I think some of them were nostalgic for getting a smaller White House press apparatus. I think it's metastasized. I think it's grown so big that we have turned presidents into what I call modern media monarchs. I mean, the television does a lot of it. We built, and the pedestal has gone up like that for presidents. Truman, whom I did interview once or twice, lived quite a different life than George Bush does, and part of that is all the attention we give it in the press.
We do. I mean, technologically, we're up and running so that we can do that.
Yes.
How do you pull that back?
I don't know how you pull it back. I think one way is you have better campaigns and more electable people. I argue in the book that we have had a succession of not to put too fine a point on it, Eileen, turkeys as modern American
Pretty
presidents.
fine point.
I say that if we had been living in medieval times and these presidents had been kings, we would have called them Lyndon the Deceiver, Richard the Crook, Gerald the Klutz, and Jimmy the Unready. And then we would have had Ronald the Enchanter, you see. Because
How about,
it was,
wait, don't leave out George.
I'm still making up my mind
You
about
haven't made up
George.
your mind yet.
No. I have some hope for George.
What about you? What's kept you from the political arena? Have you ever thought about it?
I don't, my vaccinations aren't in order.
Here you go, another 15 points. John Chancellor. Now, what do I get if I say the title?
Oh, that's 25.
Peril,
We
Peril
almost
and
never
Promise. Gee, we're almost up to 100 points here. This is a commentary on America by, well, you're the best. What can we say? Thank you, John, very
you,
much.
Eileen.
Thanks
Glad
for
to be
sharing all
here.
those good thoughts with us this morning.